Hi, in today's video I'll be talking about multi-factor authentication. Yes, I know in one of our previous video I have spoken about multi-factor authentication with email as a default method and app-based being another method, but today's video is going to be more focused around the web-based authentication, or I would say web authentication, which is also known as FIDO2 compliant authentication. So let's see what is in there. So under web-based authentication, we have biometric authentication and also hardware key or pass key based authentication. Now under the biometric authenticator, we have got the Windows Hello or Apple ID based authentication. But again, these options may appear or may not appear, or may appear differently based on your device, its configuration, whether it has got a fingerprint scanner or not, whether it has got a camera or not, and what type of operating system. Based on different factors, you may see different options for biometric authenticator, but in general, you would get Windows Hello and Apple ID based authentication under the biometric authenticator, and under the hardware key or passkey based authentications, you would see a security key as one of the options to authenticate, or using a passkey. Okay, now coming to Windows Hello or Apple ID based authentication, these are laptop based authentication. If your laptop has got a fingerprint scanner or a camera, you can use these type of biometric authentication along with a password to register under the web authentication. Now coming to the security key and passkey side, under security key you have got Yubikey, or you can use another vendor called as Thetis, I believe. So they produce the hardware keys. So you can use either of the vendors to get a hardware based key, which is in the form factor of USB device, which could be inserted into the USB port, and then it generates a pin. And also these devices, they come up with the biometric scan on it. So it would work as a combination with a pin plus the biometric authentication, and it could act as a second form of authentication while you're doing the multi-factor authentication. Now coming to the passkey is, again, I would say it's more of like mobile based authentication, in the sense that you can scan a QR code, and then based on type of your mobile OS, it could be, for iOS it could be iCloud based passkey, or if you're using Android, it could be Google Password Manager based authentication. So these are the different kind of authentications which are available with web authentication. They keep changing from device to device and OS to OS. You could see options little bit change when you actually go about authentication, but on high level, these are the things. You would land up into either of the category to authenticate yourself, and as per your organization's policy, you would choose either of them. So that was a quick intro of web authentication, one of the multi-factor authentication method. Now let's jump into the instance so that we can see a demo. So I'm on the Yokohama instance, and I would just go on the application navigator and type multi-factor authentication. So this is the multi-factor authentication, and under that we have got multi-factor criteria. So let's quickly set that up. So it is set to false out of the box. So we would just activate it. And now this multi-factor authentication would be challenged for all the users who would have any of these roles defined here. Okay, from here we would go to the multi-factor authentication properties. Now we can see that the multi-factor authentication is already enabled here. It is because we are on Yokohama, and on Yokohama the multi-factor authentication is forcefully enabled when you do an upgrade or when you install a new instance. Again, there are ways to delay multi-factor authentication on Yokohama, and we can talk about it later in some other video. But yes, by default, the multi-factor authentication is always enabled when you upgrade to Yokohama or when you install a new instance of Yokohama. So our multi-factor authentication is enabled here. Let's see other properties under the multi-factor configuration. Enable remember browser, we'll keep it checked, that is fine. The main thing which is of our importance is the FIDO2. So this is the web authentication, so this is checked. We don't want the email OTP authentication for this demo. And the thing which makes Yokohama stand out, if you compare it with Washington, is this option. Later on in this video, we will compare Washington and Yokohama configuration, because this is something which which basically keeps Yokohama a little apart from how the multi-factor authentication is set up in Washington. It's a little complicated in Washington, we'll talk about it, but this option, it makes life so much easy for the customers who would prefer having only the hardware-based authentication, only the FIDO2 compliant-based authentication. So just remember this option, this is very important. So this would help us to separate the app-based authentication and FIDO2 based authentication. So we'll get two options, and we don't have to set up the app-based authentication to use the web authentication or the FIDO2 authentication. That said, we don't have to do anything else. I mean, it's just ready. I mean, we can test it out. So what we can do is we can go to incognito mode. I'll log into the instance, and there you go. And we were talking about that last option, right, which helps us to separate this two option, right, the setup authenticator app and setup biometric. Now the user has a choice here, so they don't have to go and set up app-based authentication. They can, if they have a Yubikey, or if they have got a mobile, or they have got a laptop with a fingerprint scanner or a camera, they can just go for the second option and use it for the MFA. So we'll select the second option, click on continue, and then you get two more options here. So as we were talking initially during the intro of the video, that there is a biometric authentication, and then there is a hardware key based authentication, right? So these two options would basically give those options. So let's see, how we can configure. So first one is register passkey or security key. So this is straightforward, right? Either you can use the Yubikey or the Thetis, or you can use your mobile to generate a passkey. So if I click here, I get, either you use iPhone, iPad, whatever, to generate the passkey, or you use the security key. So if I click on, okay, let's go for the first option. So if I click on the first option and click next, I get a QR code. Now I can scan this on my mobile, and then I can generate a passkey, and that works as a FIDO2 compliant, and I can use that as a multi-factor authentication, which is perfectly fine. But what we have to do is we'll have to check the security key also, right? So when we click on the security key, we can click on next, and then it would ask you to insert the security key, the hardware key. So this is the prompt, after which if you have got a Yubikey or a Thetis hardware key, which comes in the form of USB, as I said earlier, so you can just insert it into the USB port. You'll get a prompt to enter your PIN, and then you can do a fingerprint scan, and that would act as a PIN for you from next login. So they work in conjunction, the PIN and the biometric, right? So these are the two options using the first button, and if you click on the second button, so this will give you the Windows Hello and the Apple ID stuff, right? So when I click here and I click on continue, since you can generate your passkey on Google Password Manager also, so you get an option here, but we don't want this, right? We want some other option. So when I click on that, I get two more options. What I can do is I can click on Windows Hello, and I can just click on OK, and then if I've got a fingerprint scanner on my laptop, and luckily I have that. So if I've got a fingerprint scanner on my laptop, I can use that as a biometric authentication. So let's do it. And before we do it, let's see what are the other choices which are available to us. So if I click on more choices, I've got another option as PIN. So I can set up a PIN also as a FIDO2 compliant web-based authentication, web authentication, and I can use that as a MFA authentication. But yes, let's stick to fingerprint for now. Let's try to set this up. I'll just scan my fingerprint on the scanner. So it has just accepted pass key saved. You can now use Windows Hello to sign in with your face, fingerprint, or PIN. So it has given me all the three options, right? Face, fingerprint, or PIN. But actually it has just saved my fingerprint. I have not saved any PIN, or I have not done any face ID recognition as such. So it has just saved my fingerprint. Just ignore the message. I mean, I don't know. You can now use any of them, but no, it's not any of them. It's just a fingerprint for now. So I click on OK. My fingerprint scan has been registered for the MFA now. And I will just log out and try to log in again. Okay, now when I log in for the second time, you can see here I'm just getting one option, and if I click on this, then I don't get MFA challenge for next 8 hours, but I don't want that, right? So I would just click on this button, log in using the biometric authentication, and as I've already saved my fingerprint scanner as a MFA method, so I would just use my fingerprint now. There you go. So it has accepted my fingerprint as a second form of authentication on this instance. And that completes our demo for the FIDO2 compliant web-based authentication, one of the multi-factor authentication. Okay, now as I was saying earlier, the second topic of this video is to compare the MFA of Yokohama to what it was in Washington. Now, if you see the MFA functionality in these two versions, you would see how MFA has evolved on Yokohama. So let's do the comparison. So if I just go to profile of the user on Washington and bring up the multi-factor authentication, and I would do the same for Yokohama. Now on Washington, since I have not set up the multi-factor authentication with any of the methods, so it's not showing up anything. On the Yokohama, I just did the the FIDO2 based authentication, right? Which I would remove. I can remove it from here. So if I do that, so right now I don't have any authentication method set on the Yokohama, and I don't have any on the Washington either. But if you compare these two windows here for the multi-factor authentication, you would see how different is that, right? On Washington, you just get to see one option, whereas on Yokohama, you get to see all the three options. You get to see the Authenticator app-based multi-factor authentication, then biometric, and the hardware key one, right? And this is the big difference, because on Washington, if you have to set up a FIDO-based authentication for MFA, you would have to first set up the app-based authentication, and then only you are allowed to see the other form of authentication, which is, I don't know why that design was at the first place, but then it was like that in Washington. But on Yokohama, the life has becomes so much easier with all the option being separate. So the user has got choice to choose any of these options, so they can go for app-based authentication if they prefer that. If their organization or if their security want them to use only the app-based authentication, good for the users, they can use the app-based authentication. If the security says they would have to use a biometric or a hardware key, then the user has a choice. They would just go to the hardware key option and set it up for them. Isn't it amazing? I mean, there is so much of freedom. There is so much freedom to choose what you want to configure for your MFA. Now, one more difference which I was talking about was the multi-factor authentication separation at the login page. So I'll just go to that. So I'll close this window. I'll click here. I'll go to the multi-factor authentication. Then I will go to properties on Yokohama, and I will do the same on Washington. So if I go here, now you see everything is almost same, almost. But if you scroll down and you see this option here, this makes all the difference. So when a user logins into the system for the first time, and when the MFA is enabled, they would see two options, one for app and one for FIDO, and they can choose either of them. So they don't have to do app to do MFA for FIDO, right? So that makes life so much easy, and it's a game changer, I would say. And that was all comparing the MFA on Yokohama to what it was there on Washington, DC. Well, the third and the last topic of this video is how do we administer the MFA logins? So for that, let's go to the security center. So I'm in security center under the admin center, and then I would go to the security monitoring console, and from here on the top I could see security metrics. So that is something where I'm interested in. So on this page I would go to authentications, and if you see here, there are different type of options available for monitoring the MFA users. So active MFA users would be listed here. Then somebody who is doing biometric or FIDO based authentications would be listed here. Again, this is the trending data, and then we can see the actual data here down below, which would be in the record format, displayed from a table. So this is the table. So if I want to go to the table and see the records directly at the table level, I can do that as well and take out a report. So all sort of monitorings are possible through this security center page. I would encourage you to use this page if you have not already doing it. And I found it very useful in monitoring different type of logins into the system. Not only MFA, it could be anything actually. I mean, any of the user login who has logged in using SSO, who has logged in using MFA, who is doing a side door access login. All sort of login are listed here, and you can administer them from this one page. And also, if you have got your SN utils installed, which is this tool. So if you have got the SN utils installed, you can just double click on it. You get the table information here. This is the table from which this particular UIB page is pulling the data from. So when you click on it, you go to the table directly. It's very convenient if you want to report on it, or if you want to further drill down, or if you want to bring up more information on this data. So quite handy. And I think this was the last topic. So I think that's all in this video. I hope that this information would help you with your MFA journey. Thank you very much. See you in the next video. What I would do is I would use my profile. Basically, that's the quickest way to do it. So I'll go to my multi-factor authentication options, and then I would set up the biometric authentication. I'll just create a profile for my authentication, register, and then it would ask me for my fingerprint scan, which I'm fine with. You can now use Windows Hello to sign in. Okay, that's fine. Okay, so my key is registered for MFA. So now I will log in into the instance using incognito. Okay, since I've already configured my fingerprint scan using my profile MFA option, I can use that here now. There you go. It should sign me in. And my MFA entry has been created in the MFA tables. So I'll go back to the security center again. So I'll open the security center. I'll go to the monitoring and security metrics. Now if you see the biometric scan listing here, you can see that Essence Space profile has been registered here, and if I double click on it, I can go directly to the table from here, and I can pull in some more extra information if I want to. Isn't it very handy?